with a tanned, relaxed, chilled out Alex Osmo Baker. Alex, what's going on? You ready for wildcard weekend?
Man, yeah, I took last week off, and I didn't get my fix, so now I'm really fixing for some cash monies here. And what better time than Wild Card Weekend?
I like it. These are the two best weeks of football in the of the year, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, all the best players from the NFL except Mitch Trubisky are in on the next 2 weeks, so we should be able to pick some pretty good rosters here.
I like it. So I'm just doing some simple, easy crunches on Yahoo right now, getting to a lot of Thomas and Kamara, a little James White as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about the slate. Basically, what we do every week is we break down the five top total games of the week. Of course, we only have four to choose from this week, so we're going to talk about each game on this weekend slate, and then we will build a couple lineups and maybe build a winning lineup this week on Yahoo. Of course, Yahoo is our sponsor, and if you're not playing over there, well, you should be because it's great. They have a 150K baller with 15K to first, $10 entry fee this week, 17,000 entries. Of course, you can get $30 in YSRP rewards points if you sign up through Osmo.com. Use promo code Osmo, or even just go to the Osmo site right now. EMAC has an article out, the Dollar Baller article that breaks down the slate and talks about his favorite plays. In there's a link. You click that link, you get $30 free. It's a no-brainer. So lower management fees, TSP uploads. There's a lot to like about Yahoo right now. So make sure to go head on over and check it out. All right, are you ready to dive in?
I'm ready, man. 4 games, so it should be a lot easier to break down than a normal slate here, I would think. But
Absolutely. Well, and that brings me to just kind of a question about how you approach these smaller slates. So I think a good comparison would be the Thanksgiving slate, and you had it's a 3-gamer. We don't really get a lot of slates that are this size, so it's a little bit. Maybe the strategy changes a bit. How does your strategy and your approach change on a smaller slate?
I've had a lot of success in the smaller slates before. Last Thanksgiving, I had a huge day. This year I didn't get as much turkey, but you can't win them all. But the approach I have is I just do the same thing I do every week. Try to, figure out who are the best values, who's going highly owned and under owned, and the most important thing is not getting too fancy and trying to go off the board because that doesn't pay off very often in DFS because they have minimum salaries at Yahoo. That $10 minimum salary makes it a little bit less palatable to go to some guys like maybe like a Traquan Smith, where they don't put up much production, but once in a while they get there. So,
I like that. I like that call. All right, I'm in. So that's really good to know. I think you preached that before. One of those things is like you just try not to get too cute and take these guys who are like have no, really need to catch one ball for 70 yards to go off or something like that and just aren't getting the playing time or the targets. Are you worried more about macro ownership at all, or do you try to sometimes put in a low owned player? Like, what is your philosophy? Are you worried about the ownership of the lineup as a whole, or just trying to find pivots within a lineup to find unique construction?
so normally I'd be pretty concerned about ownership, but this week it seems like the jury is pretty split here. So there aren't any players that, at least any stacks that are looking like they're super high owned.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be a little bit more subtle the choices we're making this week as far as ownership. Um, but as far as skill position players, I admit I haven't looked at the ownership in great detail yet. But there are a couple of chalk players, but really they're really like the Michael Thomases, where they're absurdly good. So it might be tough to fade them.
Absolutely. Makes total sense. Always good to hear your thoughts about just general DFS strategies. So if you have any other tidbits along the way, feel free to fire away. As well, before we dive in, we have some giveaways at Osmo.com. We have a win a yearly Osmo Plus subscription, $250 value. If you guess which golfer will be the second round leader of the Century Tournament of Champions, golf is back. Yahoo has great golf tournaments, by the way. I'm playing there this week and am enjoying my results so far. Little $20 Colin Morikawa. I'm not paying dividends yet, but we'll get there. Retweet, like, and reply. Follow Osmo_.com and Osmo Golf, and you can win that yearly golf pass. As well, we have free content today. We have the NBA ownership projections, the NFL ownership projections, and the NHL lineup builder, all free. We also have a 20% off platinum yearly pass deal, $200 off if you get a yearly pass between now and January 10th. So don't hold off on that. That is a smoking deal. All right, let's get into these games. Number one, Saturday afternoon, I guess. Buffalo at Houston. Houston 2.5-point favorites. That line has moved a little bit towards Buffalo. 43.5-point total. General thoughts on this one? How are you approaching this game?
Well, Buffalo has been one of the toughest defenses this year. Seems like every game they play is one of the lowest over-unders of the week, and this week they are the lowest over-under yet again. They just don't have a great offense, and they have a good defense, so generally that's not very good for DFS, but there are some good players on these teams, so I think maybe we can find some diamonds in the rough here.
All right, let's talk a little bit about let's go into depth on some of these teams. So Josh Allen, the Bills passing attack, not the highest total, obviously, on the slate, but a fairly weak Houston Texans secondary. What are you doing with Josh Allen here, and are you pairing him up with John Brown, a Cole Beasley, someone maybe a sneaky Dawson Knox? Do any of these pass catchers and the Buffalo stack interest you at all?
Yeah, I think that John Brown and Cole Beasley are always attractive options because they get targeted at a pretty decent rate. John Brown at 21, that doesn't really stand out a lot as far as a good value, but we're gonna have to choose someone this week, so why not him, right? Is there any particular affinity you have towards Buffalo this week?
Not especially. Like I think it's probably like it's getting the ownership that I expected, right? So we have John Brown at 25%, we have Cole Beasley at 15%, Josh Allen 16%. Like that just seems kind of like par for the course. I don't really think there's an edge there or that they're going vastly under-owned or anything. So my inclination is probably to be like a little bit underweight on that. There are a couple guys that I think here that could be GPP winners depending on how their ownership shakes down. Will Fuller at 1% currently. He's questionable. That's a huge question mark, but he's also the kind of guy that can win you a GPP as well. Jordan Akins getting running a lot of routes. Only $10 on the Houston side of things. Probably saw a little bit of extra time in that last game when Houston didn't really have much to play for, but. And then Duke Johnson as well, $13 at 1% ownership. Houston giving up the third most receptions to opposing running backs, third most yards allowed. So I think there are a couple interesting low-owned options in this game. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I admittedly am getting caught up with the news here, so I see that Will Fuller is not expected to play, and that should open up some interesting options for Houston. As far as Buffalo, it's kind of weird because I see that Josh Allen is projected to be our highest owned quarterback, and I mean that just seems wrong to me because he's not that cheap. He's in the middle of the pack here. They're not like very effective at throwing the ball. The wide receivers aren't particularly well priced. So I'm just not seeing that. I'd be more inclined to go to Houston, maybe tough matchup, but maybe Will Fuller being out gives you some cheap options with maybe a Stills. But Stills has never really paid off before for me. Has he?
Enigma, man.
Did you have him that 1 week he went off?
Yeah, that was the week that Fuller was back and he scored 2 touchdowns. It's just like he's the worst player in DFS this year. I can't figure him out. So yeah. I'm right there with you. I don't know. What are you doing with DeAndre Hopkins? $30, $30, 30% owned. Any interest there?
A little bit of interest just because he is a terrific player. Will Fuller being out should benefit him. I got off the page here. All right. So I think that he's interesting, but he doesn't strike me as a particularly good play from a value standpoint. I mean, it's a tough matchup as I've been saying, and this slate is pretty loaded with some good receivers. So, is he standing out to you among the guys like Thomas, Diggs, etc.?
No, like it's not like that price point is okay. I think. We have him for so $30. He's the second highest price receiver on the slate. I don't know. It's kind of it feels right to me. Like it's $9 more for Michael Thomas, so it's 25% more, but you are getting like it seems like a much safer play. Where DeAndre Hopkins, like the average depth of target is so low this year, and he just seems to catch a lot of passes, and it hasn't really had those like huge ceiling games. And half point PPR, I think the production's a little bit lower. So gonna have some. Not super excited about it. I think we're probably pretty close to on the same page. One final guy I want to get your thoughts on though, because this backfield has actually been pretty split. Do you like a really low owned $13 Duke Johnson?
I mean, Duke Johnson strikes me as kind of like the ultimate game flow player,
Mm-hmm.
where if Houston is trailing in the game, he'll get a lot of action. It does seem like they do prefer Carlos Hyde though in general in Houston. At least that's kind of my sense of it. But $13, maybe that he definitely fits the category of someone that is playable in DFS as opposed to someone who is just too big of a long shot. So I think we can take some stabs on him.
Absolutely. Kyle Hyde projected for 36% ownership. Duke Johnson projected for 1%. That backfield's been a lot more split than I think people realize over the past few weeks. So that, like you said, it could be game script dependent. So it's one of those things where you need to construct your roster and think about how this game flow would go in order for Duke Johnson to pay off. Any other final thoughts on this one? Any players I missed that you like at all?
I think based on what I'm seeing here, the game is more popular than you might expect. So
Mm-hmm.
it is shocking that Josh Allen is so highly owned. So I think we might be able to find some better options here.
All right, I like it. Let's move it on to the second game of Saturday. Tennessee Titans, 5 point dogs, 40 to New England Patriots, 44 and a half point total. Anything standing out to you about this one?
Um, so I think that New England, they have been pretty poor on offense this year, but they're even better at defense than Buffalo. So that would make me kind of think that some of the Tennessee guys might not be in as good a spot as they usually are. Um, but on the other hand, Tennessee's defense is about average, so maybe that would be one of the better matchups for the week is the Patriots versus Tennessee.
Interesting. Yes, we have a bit of the Tennessee secondary has been pretty weak this year. Tennessee run defense has been top 10 in the league. One guy. So let's talk about the New England side of this first, because it looks like James White is popping as a pretty good value for you as well. Sonny Michel, not that far off, $15 for each of these guys, forces you to make a decision. Which one of these guys do you like the most, and why?
I think James White, just because he seems to be the guy in New England that they count on if they need to put up points. And they played a lot of non-competitive games this year because their division has been pretty weak. But there's Tennessee, a team that has some offense. James White might be in a better spot than normal because this game is more competitive. I don't really see myself landing too much on like a Sony Michel or Burkhead, but do you
Mm-hmm.
see any potential there?
Yeah, it's tough because like Sonny Michel, I think at this point with no work in the passing game, and like he's getting the carries, but you're probably going to need a touchdown out of him for him to hit value in this game. So I don't really have a problem with it. Like he's gotten 20 carries in each of the last 3 games. He's gotten a rushing TD. He gets his 1 or 2 targets, but I think it's a fine price, and especially if the game script is that Tennessee or that New England is able to get up on Tennessee, they'll probably try to pound the ball. They're probably going to be trying to use their running back in this because the passing offense just hasn't really been there. Julian Edelman's questionable and banged up, and it's like they just have a total lack of weapons. So I wouldn't be surprised to see one of those Belichick game plans where they're just like dinking and dunking and using the short passing game. So I do think both are viable. I'm not super excited about either one, but certainly in play. What about the New England side of things? Do you like the passing attack side of things? Do you like any Tom Brady, Edelman, Sanu stacks?
Yeah, I think that Edelman might be interesting because, as you're saying, he's been banged up. So they haven't been running him out there as much, and that might be lead to people being a little bit less bullish on Edelman. But I mean, we know this is the playoffs, it's do or die. So if this game is competitive, I have a feeling Edelman will be out there almost every snap. I mean, I could be wrong, but that would be a reason why maybe Edelman will bounce back this week, while some other guys might just be kind of valued at where they should be.
Absolutely. And a really good matchup for him as well. Running the slot, he'll see a lot of Logan Ryan, who is one of the worst cornerbacks on the slate, at least graded out by PFF this year. The most yards allowed by a defensive back on the slate, almost 1,000. Pretty high opposing quarterback rating as well allowed. So I think the matchup is there, and if he's flying under the radar or people are fading him, I think it's a fairly safe play with some upside for sure. What about the Tennessee side of things here? Corey Davis is popping as one of our best values of the week. He's also getting the ownership to go along with it, though like 13% doesn't seem too bad on Yahoo. Just $10. We have him graded as one of the best values. Are you liking Corey Davis or any part of this Tennessee passing attack?
I saw one of our buddies, Sal Vetri, harping on Corey Davis today.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the quintessential guy where if they're chalk, like it's pretty palatable to just fade him. But
But he's less owned on Yahoo, which I think is
is.
appealing, right? Like he's only 13%, whereas on some other sites he's up to 25%. So does that change your the way you approach rostering him?
Well, I think that where I was going with this is like he's a fine play because you need to have three wide receivers in your lineup. So you got to pick someone. And there's going to be question marks about every guy. Corey Davis, the price is not a question mark. I mean, he's the minimum price. We know he's going to be playing most of the game. And those are two factors that you can't really argue with. So the question is, will he produce? And I'm willing to take a shot on that, especially
Yeah.
given that um, people tend to not want to play guys that haven't had any big games. And Corey Davis, he hasn't exceeded 10 points since October.
That's fair. And getting targeted and running routes, right? So I think at that ownership, I will be way more likely to play him at these bargain prices. I want to get your thoughts on two other bargain guys here that are very cheap. Mohamed Sanu, $12, still popping for us a little bit, even though the production hasn't been there. And Jonnu Smith, tight end for the Tennessee Titans, who seems to have taken over this number one tight end role. Any interest in either of those guys?
Yeah, I think that I'm definitely interested in Sanu the most. He was on the field for 50 of 61 snaps this past week. He's been targeted a good amount when he's been out there for New England, and it's clear that he's their second preferred receiver after Edelman. So I think that I feel pretty comfortable taking shots on Sanu because it's the same thing with Davis, where he just hasn't really produced yet, but the targets are there, and we know that a lot of that is just luck, kind of getting the right target at the right time.
Excellent. All right, I like it. Yeah, I feel like shares on both of those guys are definitely viable, and like Mohamed Sanu, probably going to fly a little bit under the radar for sure. What about two guys we haven't mentioned? We should mention AJ Brown, $19, hasn't seen like a huge price increase. Of course, he's just been dominant this year. Tough matchup against the Patriots secondary, and Derrick Henry, $33. Another just dominant player. Is a full Titan stack viable even in this tough matchup at low ownership? What do you think individually of AJ Brown and Derrick Henry?
I think that it is probably viable because I mean, Tannehill has been pretty good this year, and it's a tough matchup, but there is potential there. On different sites, I see based on my top stacks that Tennessee is pretty low owned, and actually on Yahoo we have Tannehill as the lowest owned quarterback of the week at 4%. I have their top stack percentage at about 10%, so that shows that there is some potential there. I don't love, AJ Brown or Corey Davis, but if everyone's gonna be on Corey Davis and Tannehill is underowned, then there's an opportunity there where you get a popular guy where the combination of those two isn't quite as popular.
Makes sense to me. Any final thoughts on this one? Any players that I missed or that you wanted to shout out?
You mentioned Jonnu Smith. That's another guy. I kind of am on the same side as you, where I feel like he's a pretty good play, but the game log, it's pretty decent actually. Now that I'm looking at it, he does block a lot more than your average tight end, which is a concerning factor. But I don't see a lot of teams with good tight ends on the slate. Um, I suppose the chalk will probably be Goddard or Ertz as well as Jared Cook. But
Mhm.
if you don't pick one of those guys, you're gonna really have to dig deep to find anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. He does block a lot, but yeah, running some routes lately seems to be getting more and more becoming more and more a part of this offense. He's getting about 4 to 5 targets, so you're basically kind of hoping for 50 yards and a touchdown at that price, which I think is doable on this up against Patriots and on this slate at pretty low ownership. So yeah, kind of neither here nor there, but not a bad pivot point. Shall we move it on to the Sunday games here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Minnesota, the highest total game of the week. New Orleans, highest totaled team of the week. -7.5 points. This has come down from 8.5, and the total is 49.5 for this one. Indoors, this is my favorite game to stack. I like a lot of things here. I'm sure this is everyone's favorite game to stack. What are you doing with this one?
Yeah, I think this is a great game to stack because Michael Thomas is so good. Breeze, although it is a little frustrating to see that Taysom Hill comes in and gets some of the touchdowns, that he's a fine option, especially on a 4-game slate where he doesn't have to get 30 points or something necessarily. So I like that combo. Kamara, it looks like Yahoo bumped up his price. He was really, really cheap last time we did a show, but he's a good player. And then I see Adam Thielen's only $20.
Oof.
Yeah, he's the guy that has been injured the whole season, but maybe in the playoffs still run him out there a little bit more, and he could be more effective.
Yeah, and it seems like he hasn't had the injury designation. He's going to have a little bit of time off here as well. I think 2 full weeks because Minnesota rested their starters. So you could possibly expect him to be back to full health. I mean, it's certainly better than a $14 Olabisi Johnson. Let's just say that. What about the Minnesota stack here? Kirk Cousins probably not getting much ownership. $22 seems very cheap. Tough New Orleans defense, but probably Minnesota might be in a situation where they have to pass. And of course, we have a very concentrated offense in Minnesota. Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. If they were to go back to their roots over the last couple of years, that might be a very simple, easy stack that could see a very concentrated target share and concentrated production at not great ownership because of the matchup.
Yeah, I think the stack it's got potential. Cousins has been terrific when he's throwing the ball. They don't throw a ton in Minnesota because they do favor the running game. But in a spot where they're more than a touchdown dog, you gotta think they're gonna throw more than they have over the season. The contrarian play could be going to Cook though, where like everyone's thinking that Minnesota's gonna have to throw to keep up with New Orleans, but there is a pretty unlikely, but in the realm of possibility that Minnesota just dominates this game. And if you fade all of New Orleans and you pick Cook, that could be a pretty good combo.
Well, Ben Ross and I did the NFL strategy show this morning, and that was one of our kind of favorite plays of the current ownership of the slate. Because like if you're looking at Kamara at a similar price point, Dalvin's getting half to a third of the ownership, and I think we can pretty safely say that he is not. Kamara is not like a 70% bet to outscore Dalvin Cook on this slate, right?
Oh no, I mean like I would think Cook is the better play to be honest, but I'll have to dig into my projections here because sometimes my general feeling isn't reflected in my own projections. But let's see here. I mean, Cook. There was a report today that they're gonna run him out there even more than they have this week. I actually do have them projected about the same.
Yeah.
So that slated me to think that Cook might be the better play.
Yeah, there was a report on RotoWorld that said they were going to unleash Dalvin Cook or something. So, that reports like that can often buoy ownership, and maybe this will come up a little bit, but I think if the current ownership sticks, he's a great play relative to a lot of these, or some of the higher priced running backs that are getting more ownership, especially Kamara too. So, as well, like Kamara is, still his workload is still down, and it's a little bit of recency bias. It's kind of the reverse that we've seen the last 2 weeks, where he's actually had the touchdown regressions finally come through, and now people are rostering him but his production is essentially based on that full touchdown. He's gotten less than 15 carries every single week since October, and his targets are decent, but I almost feel like I'm on the fade side of Kamara this week.
Yeah, and one thing I've noticed in the past years is that like I expected that once the playoffs came around, Kamara would be out there much more as a percentage than he had. Last year, of course, the backup was Mark Ingram, I think. And then this year it's Latavius Murray. They did like Ingram more than Murray. So that is a factor. Maybe Kamara gets a little bit bigger workload than he has. But I'm not convinced of that. So I think that it's going to depend which side the line you fall there, whether you think they're going to run him out there all game or if they're going to have the usual split.
Absolutely. So just want to get your thoughts on a few more players here. $39 Michael Thomas, 60% ownership. Are you in on Michael Thomas?
That might be just one where like there's no expensive guys on the slate, so he just like pops when you run a crunch. But $39 is definitely a price where that's like Christian McCaffrey money you're paying here. So yeah. I'm fine fading him. I don't see any reason why that's a good price. So I think that you could definitely look elsewhere.
Absolutely. We saw on the Thanksgiving slate, like he was the chalkiest player on the slate, and he ended up disappointing. So on these smaller slates, you never know. We'll just want to get your thoughts on a few low-owned players here. I really like Tre'Quan Smith at 1% ownership for $14. He's basically become the wide receiver 2 in New Orleans, and we've seen him put up those big games in the past. So he could kind of come out of nowhere, I think, to break the slate. Latavius Murray, 1% owned. Ted Ginn Jr. seeing less time than Tre'Quan Smith. Is there anyone down here that's getting no ownership that you like taking a flyer on?
I think comparing Tre'Quan Smith to some other guys like Corey Davis, I'm kind of looking at this game log here. I see Tre'Quan Smith got 14 fantasy points last week. So pretty good way to close out the season. Maybe if this guy's clicking around building their lineups, they might lean more towards him. So that might lead me to some guys like Corey Davis, where they just haven't produced to this point, and I'm willing to take a shot.
Okay, I like it. Any final thoughts on this one? Anyone I missed?
No. I guess the final thought is just that New Orleans has the highest team total by a lot this week. So they may be kind of the popular offense, but there's so much variance in football that not a necessity.
Made it all the way through that preview without mentioning Drew Brees, which is it's pretty good. $35 Drew Brees, I think he's probably, I'm guessing by Sunday he'll be the chalkiest quarterback on the slate, but he's been so hot lately that I think if you're going to roster him, you just find some pivots elsewhere, but certainly not a bad spot for New Orleans with the 29 implied total here. Let's move it on to our final game here. Seattle, 1.5 point favorites over the Eagles on the road in Philadelphia, 45-point total. General thoughts on this one? Anything standing out to you?
Well, I think Ertz seems like an interesting situation because they were talking about how he might have a lacerated kidney, and there's no certainty that he'll play this week, which is going to be a big factor because this game takes place on Sunday, so we don't have the normal Adam Schefter report to guide us here. So it will be difficult to build lineups with this in mind because if he's out, Dallas Goedert seems like a really good play. If he's in, maybe Ertz would be the better play.
How do you approach them? Do we have like a $5 difference between these guys? Will you have some lineups where you just pop in Zach Ertz at 25, and then if he's out, you go to Goddard and you eat the loss? Is that how you would approach this?
Yeah, I mean that's totally a legitimate strategy. I think on Yahoo, um, where we have late swap, that makes it makes a lot of sense. Ideally, you use that $5 to get some upgrades in your lineup, but there aren't really any. Maybe you could like put in DK Metcalf and swap up to Tyler Lockett if you swap down for Hurts.
Yeah. Although, like, are we sure that that's an upgrade these days? Like, technically, Nick leads this slate on in routes run over the past 3 weeks. He's getting targeted more often than DK Metcalf. Is he becoming the go-to guy in this Seattle offense? Because it certainly feels that way lately.
Yeah, I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other, but
He did
uh,
goose egg against Arizona 2 weeks ago, so maybe I'm being a little. It's a little bit much.
I mean, Tyler Lockett has had some really bad games recently, so that might be, yeah, wow. That's right. He had a 0, a 1.7, so maybe this is a guy who will go under owned because he just hasn't been very good recently.
What about $13 Greg Ward?
That's a really good price. I mean, with no Jeffrey, no Jackson, and Aguilar looks like he's going to be out, so Ward. This seems like the natural guy to go to. He's gotten a lot of targets.
Yeah, 17% ownership, right about where Corey Davis is at. I think I'd rather have Ward by a hair, but it's kind of those are both great bargain plays. So again, like if you're rostering these like really obvious bargain plays, you're gonna have to probably have to find some pivots elsewhere. One guy I want to get your thoughts on who's getting no ownership at $18, but may be one of the guys that just ends up like winning someone all the money. He got, I think, an 80% snap count last week. Boston Scott, has he taken this lead role? And is this one of those situations where you can maybe, maybe it's a bad play in a vacuum or it's a bad play from the projections perspective, but you're getting ahead of the curve because there's a chance that there's a highly that there's some variance in there, and maybe he is the starting running back, and they're going to use him more often.
It's not like a absurd play by any means. I think that um, I would lean more towards Jordan Howard because they kind of announced before the game last week that he would be the emergency backup to Sanders and Scott. But we know earlier in the season he was the lead guy most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I might take some shots on Jordan Howard, hoping that he gets to start maybe. But I think Miles Sanders is probably the safest bet of the bunch because in games where both Miles Sanders and Scott played, he Sanders got a lot more of the work than Boston Scott, and it looks like Sanders got injured in the last game, so that might have explained the workload there.
Right. Makes sense to me. Yeah, $18, 0.1% ownership. At least you don't need much to get overweight. That's the only. Any just thoughts on stacks on these guys? Are you going to be stacking up like a Wilson, Metcalf, Lockett, Wentz, Ward, Goddard? Like, how are you liking the stacks on each of these from each of these teams this week?
Yeah, I think it's pretty close. I don't have any team projected over 20% chance of being the top stack, so I really think it's wide open. You can go to anyone. Um, and then it's just a matter of how you stack. So you could stack two guys with your quarterback on a short slate. I think that's a better play than normal because um, if you start with the assumption that your quarterback is the highest scoring, then uh, there is a pretty good chance that there will be several touchdowns, and if you get the other guy with the touchdown, you're in good shape. The game stack is something I might try to avoid this week because I've noticed that so many people these days stack the game.
Mm-hmm.
Probably like 50% of lineups have a game stack in them. So on a 4 game slate, a blowout is just as good as a competitive game almost. Because you don't really need a guy to go out there and throw 6 touchdowns or something. And for that reason, I'm less bullish on the game stack.
All right, that makes sense to me. Yeah, Miles Sanders. Just checking up the final injury report here. He is not on the final injury report. I think he did miss practice all week though with that ankle injury that caused him to leave halfway through the game against the Giants. So it's one of those situations where I think that kind of play, that Boston Scott kind of play, could blow up in your face, but could do very well if the ownership doesn't get there. All right, should we build some lineup, build one cash and one GPP?
Let's do it.
All right. Yeah, okay. So let me just pull up some. So just like a kind of, I crunched using the wrong projections, but Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara popping a lot here. What are your favorite value plays that you want to get in if we're going to pay up for those guys in cash? What are we doing for value wise? Are you like Corey Davis, Greg Ward? Who's standing out to you for your favorite value plays this week?
At running back, I think James White at 15. That's a really good price.
Yep.
At wide receiver, we have Corey Davis and Sanu. Tight end, let's see, Jonnu Smith. I like him a little bit more than Jake Pallister, I think.
All right. So let's pop in. Well, let's pop in a quarterback, I guess, first.
Right.
Who are you digging?
I mean, Tom Brady for 24.
Ooh.
That seems like he's probably the best value, but I mean, he hasn't been very good either. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm a little bit worried about the weather. A little bit worried about this. Like, I don't know. I think I would probably go with Kirk Cousins in a dome in a negative game script, but I'm with you there. We can go with Tom Brady.
Okay. Oh yeah, either of those guys seem fine, and then we have plenty of money to spend up on skill position.
Exactly. So, do you want to pop in James White as well?
Yeah.
With Brady and Corey Davis.
All right.
And then let's get to some high-valued running backs here. Devin Singletary popping for $20.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that they've shown he's the workhorse now, and that $20 doesn't really reflect it. So I like him.
All right. Tight end. I'm guessing there's going to be one guy popping pretty hard here. And that is Joshua Perkins.
Right now, my projections, I don't have Ertz in because it seemed a little bit optimistic last time I looked at it. But
yeah.
Based on that, maybe Goddard's too risky. So I'm a little bit torn here.
Jonnu Smith.
He's a good value. I mean, in the absence of a good play, maybe we just go for the cheap one.
All right. That's going to leave us. What about defense?
Also, Dawson Knox at $10. Seems like maybe he's a play, but that might be just unnecessary.
A bridge too far.
Yeah.
Defense.
Seahawks.
We have their top value play, Houston Texans.
My general thought here is just go for the team that faces someone that throws the most picks. And that would have to be the Texans, right?
Yeah.
Josh Allen is not great at ball security.
And fumbles, yeah.
Yeah.
That leaves us with $35 left per player. I have a feeling that we are going to have trouble spending this money. So Michael Thomas is going in.
Okay.
I'm thinking like DeAndre Hopkins going in.
Yeah.
And then we got $37 left over, so we can upgrade elsewhere. Dalvin Cook, Kamara.
Maybe, we could put in Kamara here.
Okay.
And then we got $9 left. Maybe we could upgrade Tom Brady to, let's see.
Josh Allen.
That doesn't seem like much of an upgrade, but
yeah.
Let's see.
We could go. I've got one for you. We could go Tom Brady down to Kirk Cousins.
Okay.
Devin Singletary up to Dalvin Cook.
I like it.
So we got White, Cook, Kamara, Kirk Cousins, Thomas Hopkins. That's a pretty good looking team right there.
I agree, man. This is a nice looking squad.
All right, let's fire it up.
All right.
You got a nice cash contest on Yahoo there?
I loaded up this $100 70 team 50-50 single entry, so that means that the pros can only enter once, and that's the type of cash game I like.
I like that too. Okay, let's move it on. Let's build a GPP. Where are we going? What's your favorite stack of the week here for GPPs?
Let me throw this back on you, man. Who are you feeling this week?
All right, I'm going Minnesota again. I'm going with the concentrated Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Kirk Cousins stack because if Thielen's healthy and if they're in a negative game script, then you're getting a very cheap stack, pretty low ownership. And we've seen this. There's not a lot of guesswork in it, right? Like you don't have to factor in a third wide receivers. Maybe Rudolph gets one. Maybe Dalvin Cook goes off. But if this Minnesota passing attack does go off, then you're pretty certain where that passing attack is going.
I like it, man. I think that's a good strategy. Here's one where I feel like the game script or game stack thing I said. I'm going back on that because I feel like Minnesota loves to run the ball, so they really only will pass a ton if New Orleans is ahead. So that's leading me to Michael Thomas here.
I love it. Michael Thomas is the bringback?
Yeah.
Perfect. Let's pop in maybe like a value running back here. James White, one of your top options.
Yep.
Pop him in. And then, so we got about 19 left per player. I'm okay with going with like Singletary. If you want to pop in someone else, fire away.
Yeah, that works for me.
Singletary. Let's get a defense here. What do we got for D? Just I don't hate the Seattle D at $10. I think yeah.
Yeah.
So now we got $24 left per player. I'm guessing this is going to be fairly chalky so far. Do you want to mix in like a lower owned player into this mix?
Man, I can't really think of any way to do that because suppose we spend our we get Dalvin, or wait, we would want maybe we want Hopkins as the flex.
Let's see here. So I'll throw some options.
How about Edelman? I mean, maybe he's a little contrarian because he's expensive.
Let's see what his ownership is at here. So Julian Edelman, 26% owned of these top guys. Oh, Adam Thielen's one of the lesser owned guys on the slate. So
what about Lockett? I'm kind of interested in him.
Let's see, Lockett, 22%.
Oh, that's a lot higher than I thought.
So like we could go pay for one of these like cheaper wide receivers. You could go like a full game stack, like a Tre'Quan Smith, 1% owned.
All right, I got a contrarian idea here, man. Double tight end stack, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert.
Double tight end stack, and then you can flex. You can if Ertz is out, so you put Goddard in the tight end position. Not that it matters. You double stack with Ertz. Don't need to worry about playing your defense against your opposing offense this week. That won't really matter at the end of the day. It's actually a good way to kind of build unique lineups. And then if Ertz is out, you can switch to Tyler Lockett. If we get a report earlier on in the morning, you can switch to someone in that Saints game as well. So kind of gives you a little bit of flexibility and some uniqueness.
All right. So we got $4 left. I suppose we could look and see if we want to spend up at any position.
Yeah, you want to upgrade to like the Eagles D or the Saints D? Saints D we can't do because that's our stack. Right?
Yeah.
Contrarian move, but maybe too contrarian.
Yeah, no real upgrades. There aren't any obvious upgrades, I guess. So Eagles D, I mean, that's a much worse spot, I would think, than Seattle D.
Yeah, I agree.
So I guess the upgrade would be to the Texans, but that is running back versus opposing defense.
You could always just save the cash and give yourself a little flexibility heading into Sunday too, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
because that Ertz news might drop. We might have a pretty good inkling about whether or not he's out. So,
I like it.
Awesome. Well, that's going to do it for us. We're going to wrap it up 15 minutes early because you have an On the Contrary appearance coming up on the Awesemo YouTube channel, 15 minutes away. Is that right? Did I get the time right this time, Alex? Brick75 joining yourself and Spags to go over your favorite contrarian picks and just generally talk about the slate. Of course, we have lots of coverage for you this weekend on Awesemo.com. 2 hours before locked tomorrow, we have Alex joining Lofty and Ben Rasa to break down the slate, and then live before lock with Sal Vetri and Chris Randone. The following day, Emac and I will be live 1 hour before the slate to talk about everything, and we're just going to repeat this same schedule next week for the conference championships. So that's going to do it for us. Thanks so much. If you wouldn't mind hitting that like button on the way out, we appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in, and we will be back here at the same time next week.